Hello, everyone. I'm Allison, and you are listening to Play It Forward on WUSB Stony Brook, 90.1 and 107.3 FM. Thank you, Tyrone. Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yes, we're getting close to the holidays, too. So alongside me are my co-hosts and fellow advocates of Play It Forward, Kurt Hall and Taylor Solomon. And momentarily, we will introduce our guests here in the studio. We have Suffolk County Executive Assistant DA Megan O'Donnell and Narcotics Bureau Chief Mark Murray, as well as some special guests that Kurt will be introducing. But before we begin, I just have an announcement. It is Radiothon here at WUSB, so you hear it all from hip-hop to rock, blues to reggae, electronic to punk, commentary, and more on WUSB 90.1 and 107.3 FM. Our volunteer-led radio station is 24/7 because of people like you. Thank you for your donations and continued support. Your donations keep us on the air and in your ears. You can donate on the website, WUSB.FM, or call 631-632-6901 or 1-888-632-9872 to pledge your donation. Thank you so much for your support. So let's pass the mic to Taylor for a closer look at what Play It Forward is all about.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. The Play It Forward Project is a nonprofit with the mission to bring awareness, education, and advocacy to the fentanyl and opioid crisis. Our show is your go-to place for riveting conversations about this topic and the tough reality of substance use disorder. For that, we are dedicated to bringing in the experts, the game changers, and the voices that need to be heard. We broadcast live from Stony Brook University's radio station every other Friday, 1 to 2 Eastern Standard Time. And we encourage you to stick around till the end of our show because we've got a treasure trove of resources lined up that we hope that will inform you and empower you to empower us all. We are on Instagram. SBU.playitforward is our page. Check it out, see what we have going on. And check out YouTube. The Play It Forward Project is where you can go to listen to our previous shows on the go. If you connect with the mission of our show, we truly appreciate your support on social media. That way our mission can reach more people. Before I hand this off to Kurt, I want to mention that I have great news regarding the organization, that we are expanding. 2 other fellow co-hosts and I are creating the Play It Forward Project Club on Stony Brook campus to launch this upcoming spring semester.
Yeah. All right.
We are so excited to continue and expand the advocacy, and we need more student club members. Presenting next is Kurt, who will share a few facts about fentanyl.
Hello, everyone. Fentanyl is a highly potent synthetic opioid that is 30 to 50 times stronger than heroin. As little as 2 milligrams of fentanyl has been killing many people every day. Here's a visual. Picture a penny. That amount is just enough to cover Abraham Lincoln's nose. This deadly opioid kills 1 person on average every 11 minutes, making it the leading cause of death for adults ages 18 to 45. That means that during our show, approximately 5 people will have lost their lives to opioids. Fentanyl's devastating toll claims over 200 lives each day. This is similar to a commercial plane crashing every single day. Without further ado, here is Allison to introduce our guests.
Thank you, Kurt and Taylor. So on behalf of Play It Forward, I'd like to warmly welcome Suffolk County Executive Assistant DA Megan O'Donnell and Narcotics Bureau Chief Mark Murray. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show. And on behalf of SBU, we all thank you tremendously for your time this past Wednesday giving the presentation to students in the SAC on fentanyl and drug addictions to the campus. So we're incredibly grateful for you being here today and appreciate your service to our community. So let's take a moment, tell the listeners about yourselves.
Sure, so I'll start. So I'm Megan O'Donnell. I'm a division chief with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. I oversee 4 bureaus, but one of the bureaus that I oversee is Narcotics. Narcotics handles all investigations and prosecutions for felony narcotic charges. The chief of that bureau is with me here today, Mark Murray, so I'll turn it over to him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Megan and I actually started in the same hiring class together with the DA's office in 1998.
Wow.
John, our 4th district attorney. As you know, the district attorney right now is Ray Tierney, who we've both known a long time because he was one of us at one point before being elected. I first went to the Narcotics Bureau in 2000. I was there for maybe 4.5 years. I went to other bureaus within the office after that. Never really got away from narcotics investigations because as most people here probably know, narcotics kind of runs through a lot of different threads of things. So I was always kind of involved in those cases. I went back as a supervisor in 2013, and I've been chief of the unit for the past 6 years.
Wow. Thank you for your service in protecting our community.
Yes.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. And so here's Kurt to get things rolling.
Yeah, so I would like to introduce, I brought two friends from Hope House, two guys that are living recovery now. They are contributing members of society. They might not have always considered themselves that, but they are today. And I'm grateful to have both of them in my lives. Grateful to call them both friends. First, I'll introduce Chris. Chris and I go back about 7 years now, and we kind of did Hope House together and have remained close over the years, and he's a pretty close part of my circle. So, Chris, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. My name is
get nice
Chris.
and close to the, yep. There you go.
Yes, thank you for having me here. And I think guys are doing is a great thing, and everybody needs to really listen. Like Kurt said, I've been friends with him for quite a few years now. Proud to call him the godfather to my daughter.
Oh,
And yeah, he's a real friend. And, you know, who would have thought two people like us from literally different sides of the country at the time
yeah.
would be such close friends. And that's all because of recovery and the healing process that brings us all together when we're living in a tight space with each other, and we really do become brothers. And Will, right next to me, is my other brother. Now, I don't know how long we know each other, about 2 years, a little over 2 years now. Just about. And a lot of brothers in the house. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Chris. I'll introduce Will now. Will, yeah, like Chris just said, has been here for about 2 years. Another upstanding guy in the community, always willing to lend a hand, always a power of example. He doesn't talk the talk, he walks the walk. He's working at our homeless shelter right now and back in school. So, Will.
Yeah, how you doing, everybody? Yeah, I'm Will, and like Kurt said, it's like, you know, I lived this recovery thing, and I came a long way, you know what I mean? I myself was out there addicted to drugs at one point, and 2.5 years ago, I came to Hope House, and it changed my life right now. And I ended up back in school. I'm in my 3rd semester of college over at Suffolk.
Wow.
And I'm going for my associate's degree, and then after that, I'm going to get my KSAT to become a substance abuse counselor.
Woohoo.
And, you know, things have been great right now. As Kurt mentioned, I work at Pat's Christie's, the homeless shelter for Hope House. I'm an advocate there. So I'm just, you know, striving forward and just trying to live a better life. And I just appreciate all the help that y'all are doing on y'all end, being in the offices and stuff like that, as far as like having a pulse on this opioid thing, because it's really out of hand. I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me. And,
Thank you.
Yes,
And
thanks, Will.
congratulations on your recovery, guys. That's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're both solid guys, so grateful you guys are here. So, yeah, I think we're going to start off. We had a presentation the other day, and we are grateful for the 3 students that came, but we also kind of wanted to address the lack of attendance and some of the reasons that may be, whether it be stigma or just lack of interest, and what that kind of says about the climate that we're in right now, and maybe it speaks a little bit to the climate that we're in right now.
Yeah, we posted this all over social media. We were really hoping for a much better turnout, but granted, the time of the year, it's everyone's at finals.
Yeah, we'll cut them some slack with that. Finals.
Yeah. But seriously, for 1 hour, the wealth of information that was given by Mark and Megan and Rob was amazing. And really, the students that were there said they learned a lot of new things. So we're hoping they're going to pass that along. But Megan brought up another reason, and you said that was desensitization, right? Why don't you speak about that?
Well, I just think that much like the pandemic, right? People get tired of talking about something. So it's a bit of fatigue, but then also I think a bit of this false sense of, I know about it. I have family members or I have friends. I know about overdoses. I know the dangers of I know everything there is to know, and that's it. I can tell you, as someone who has worked for the government of Suffolk County for over 25 years, as Mark pointed out, most of that time with the DA's office, and again, overseeing a narcotics bureau, I sat there on Wednesday and I myself learned a lot. The drug, not only the trade, but the drugs themselves, the chemistry, the molecules, the effects on the body, the biology, there's so much that goes into this issue, and there is so much to learn and to be aware of and to educate ourselves about. So there's, I think, a lot of different things going on, but I think part of it is that desensitization.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I lost my train of thought as soon as you stopped talking.
Well, I can keep it.
Yeah,
I can turn it over to Mark.
Yeah. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
I think she's right. You know, I do think the time of year has been tough, but people get tired of certain things, certain messages. The fentanyl message has been out here for a few years, but the name of the game, what's important about our message right now is the fentanyl dangers have evolved. It's not the same issue it necessarily was 5 years ago. A couple of the people here were asking us about what's changed over the past few years. The substances themselves, it used to be fentanyl was an additive to heroin. Now fentanyl has entirely supplanted the heroin supply almost exclusively here on, at least in Suffolk County. Your pressed pills are typically counterfeit, and if it's posing as oxycodone, it is almost certainly pressed fentanyl. We're finding fentanyl mixed in with cocaine. We're finding fentanyl mixed in other pressed pills that might be posing as Xanax or some other antidepressant. It's popping up in so many different places. You might have seen it's even recently we've had 2 separate investigations in the Suffolk County Jail that have involved paper being transferred from person to person, fentanyl infused on cardstock, so that the paper can be ingested and allow someone to get a high. It's coming in many different forms because it is so potent and it can be secreted in almost anything and you wouldn't know it. So it continues to evolve and people need to know about it. But I do think, going back to the original question, people think they know what it is now, and it's not necessarily true.
And back to Megan's point, but also to yours, Mark, is that it is so important that we do this and continue to do this because it's ever changing. We had the crack epidemic, and then there's always going to be something. There's always going to be the addiction component, and it doesn't really matter whether it's heroin or crack or fentanyl or whatever. But it is easy to to see so much, I think, and to be desensitized that you're like, I'm just sick of hearing about this. I'm just tired altogether of seeing nonstop on whatever that people are dying 100,000 a day or 100,000 a year.
You know,
Gets
Carol
really tiring.
Teltier wrote an op-ed for Newsday, similar topic, the lack of media coverage, and that's something I'm studying right now. And she said remember the statistics of the amount of deaths were on the front page every day.
Yes.
Those numbers.
Yes.
She's like, how come we don't have that now for fentanyl?
Right.
It's just as bad. And even if people are desensitized, but you pass by a grocery store, you see the front page of the newspaper. I mean, I just feel like that's something, why isn't that being done?
Right. Well, that's one thing that the DA speaks to is, and we've talked about our plan to go to Albany in January, to go to the legislature and to talk about the 4 bills that Assemblyman Steve Stern is proposing, and they all relate to fentanyl in some manner. But the DA has said over and over, I understand that these bills aren't necessarily going to pass on January 8th. However, what I do expect and what I do demand is a conversation. I want a discussion. I want to talk about this. For some reason, 399 people in our own county died of fentanyl poisoning in 2022, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's having a real conversation. So that's what we're looking to do in January, is to have a conversation, have a discussion, and demand one.
Yeah, we're going to demand it for sure.
Yes.
I do think that's a problem, though, because a lot of people, like you mentioned about people not, getting involved and stuff like that, they feel like if it's not a family member of mine, if it's not my child or anything like that, I have nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? They just want to just keep going by. You know what I mean? Like, everybody needs to get involved, because that's the only way that this situation is going to get addressed, is if everybody gets involved. That's what I see.
Right on, Willie.
Well, and what always sticks out to me too is when we went down to DC and that Dr. Steve was saying how many people, he speaks all over the place, and how many politicians, whoever, come to him and say, hey, off the record, my son, off the record, my daughter, hey, and it's like, well, Here's why we're here's a big piece of why we're in this problem. Nobody wants to talk about it, and not my family, and the shame and the stigma that goes along with it needs to be eradicated.
Absolutely. 100. Well said, Kurt. I agree with you. And I know that you both agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so let's move on a little bit here, and maybe let's jump into talking about some of the community outreach efforts by the DAO to our listeners.
Sure.
Some of those things.
Okay, so probably the most important thing I think we've been empowered to do with this administration, and it's really been something myself and Megan have chewed on for several years, but projects need time to develop, and you also need the manpower to be able to pull these things off. We have a lot more resources in my bureau than we've ever had than in any other administration. And what we've been able to do is collaboratively put together a school presentation. And it's not just for schools, it can be for communities. You've now seen the message. And it can be as little as half an hour, it can be an hour. It's meant to involve conversation. It's a PowerPoint. We have videos, we have different talking points rooted in large measure in things we're seeing here in our community.
And Mark, I think we were talking the other day about the ages too, that you guys are going into middle schools right now, right?
We are going into middle schools and high schools, and we can adjust our messages and our materials to try to cater, if that's the right way to put it, to the audience that we're addressing. We've never been able to do that before. The DA, when he was elected very early, had a conversation with me. He said he wants to get out there and do this. And we put it together last year. We had a couple schools reach out to us and get involved, but now it's actually taking on some momentum, and we've been pretty busy, and it's a good thing.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. It's very important.
Unfortunate that you're busy, but it's great that you're busy too. It's unfortunate there's a need for it, but... Okay, could you provide an overview of the current state of the fentanyl opioid crisis in Suffolk County? What trends or patterns have you observed? Are there any?
Well, patterns, certainly. So I was addressing a couple of the people here before we got on the air. Before the pandemic, we did have what looked like a modest decrease in the overdose deaths here in the county. And
is that attributed to anything or just feet on the pavement?
I think in part feet on the pavement, certainly. It was a small section that we were looking at in 2019, but it looked like it was trending the right way. I don't necessarily think we were the only area that was seeing that, but then the pandemic happened.
Yeah, it had other plans for you.
And pandemic, I think, obviously encouraged the worst in people. A lot of fear, insecurity, mental health issues exacerbated by the pandemic.
Loneliness.
Isolation, yeah. We experienced that a lot at the house and saw a lot of people go back out because of that.
But the product also changed. And one of the main drivers, I believe, for it is, when the world basically went into isolation, you consider where cocaine comes from, for example. It's indigenous to Colombia and Peru and making its way through a series of South and Central American countries before it hopscotches to us. Fentanyl was right there, right below our border. It didn't have to travel through all those different paths. Fentanyl is also unique in that it's not tied to a grow cycle like heroin or cocaine. 24/7, 365, it can be synthesized, manufactured, and distributed. Fentanyl actually became the dominant drug we continue to see during the pandemic. Other things were harder to acquire. Fentanyl was always there. What else did we see? Fentanyl mixed in with other substances. Cocaine has been the very popular one, which unfortunately we've witnessed in a number of overdoses locally. Pressed pills masquerading as oxycodone or other prescription drugs.
Just so the listeners here too, I know somebody who just last week got what he thought was prescription Xanax, was told it was prescription. I have this prescription and I'm giving you Xanax from this bottle. And it was laced with fentanyl. He had a non-fatal overdose. He's luckily still with us, but it is a very, very real thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mark.
No. That's extremely important to point out, because I'm guessing whoever this person was somebody, unfortunately, who was experienced enough to believe that what they were taking was whatever they were used to taking and abusing. We've got experienced professionals, lab analysts, undercover officers, other law enforcement members who many times can't tell you the difference just by looking at it. You need a full-blown lab analysis to tell you what's lurking underneath.
Wow.
That kind of brings us into your question, though, if you want to jump onto that before the break.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, yeah, we were at the DEA Family Summit on Fentanyl, which I want to get into the next segment. But I'm just... So Special Agent in Charge, DEA Agent Frank Tarantino, spoke about the challenges of prosecuting on state versus federal level. Can you speak to that? Speak about that?
Sure.
You want to kick off?
Sure, I can kick off. So the state doesn't necessarily have a quote-unquote death by dealer statute, but they do have enhancements for drug dealers who deal drugs and then death does in fact occur. So it's a pretty high enhancement. Mark probably knows the specifics. But for all intents and purposes, we refer to it as death by dealer. So we at the state level, we don't have that. We don't have any enhancement as far as sentencing goes when death in fact occurs. Even if the person sells the drug, sells fentanyl, knowing that the end user is vulnerable, perhaps, had just gotten out of rehab, and perhaps their system is not quite ready for what they're buying. For any reason at all, there is no type of enhancement at the sentencing for that type of a drug dealer. So oftentimes we find at the state level that we actually have to turn to our federal partners and ask for their help in prosecuting an appropriate dealer under the appropriate circumstances who we believe this is more than just a drug sale. This is more than just a drug dealer. This is someone who intentionally caused the death of another, and he should be charged and appropriately sentenced.
Charged for murder.
Well, exactly. Again, it's not in the federal system. It's not a death by dealer statute. It is just an enhancement when it comes to sentencing, but it still gives them a heck of a lot of leverage to really go after that small segment of the population, because again, we're not saying it's all drug dealers,
right?
But that small segment who really should appropriately be charged with what they have done, which is dealt death.
So that would be very helpful to have the support on the federal level.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, I can turn it over to Mark because he's the one on a daily basis who would be turning to our federal partners and asking for their help. So Mark, you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure. So we actually have presently in the Bureau 3 Special Assistant United States Attorneys. It's a designation that you have to go through security clearances and be vetted like any other federal employee. It affords us a seat at the table more immediately in terms of allowing conversations for appropriate cases to be brought to the Eastern District, because it's not just a matter of referring a case, but having someone who is familiar with the case and can help do the work, and that's what our attorneys are able to do. We try to be selective. Many times what we're doing is we're looking for help in situations where somebody might not be bail eligible. There's a great many, actually the majority of our offenses do not have bail eligibility on the books. It might be that the substance in question is not on the state books. The federal schedule of controlled substances, because of some emergency scheduling provisions that the federal government has, as well as some other things, they've got a broader spectrum of substances that they can go after than we do on the state levels. It could be geared to something like that makes us need to have that good working relationship with our federal partners.
Well, thank you for that. Thanks.
We're going to jump right back into this conversation after our break. Thank you for joining us for the first half of our show, Play It Forward. We appreciate your support and hope you'll stay tuned for the second half of this show, where we have the honor of interviewing Suffolk County Executive Assistant DA Megan O'Donnell and Narcotics Bureau Chief Mark Murray. Tune into our show every other Friday here on WUSB.FM from 1 to 2 p.m. Don't forget to give us a follow on Instagram at sbu.playitforward and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Play It Forward Project, all one word.
So by now, almost everyone knows someone who has died this way. We must remember that these deaths are preventable. Each one of us has the power to make a difference. To all parents and caregivers, we understand these conversations can be challenging, but do not fool yourself into thinking, not my kid. And to everyone, talk to the people you love. Your words and support can be life-changing. It may be the most crucial discussion you'll ever have with them. One pill will kill. So I'd like to play a song. This is a really wonderful, beautiful song by an up-and-coming artist named Stephen James. He lost his older brother to an overdose and wrote this song about him. I connected with him on Instagram when it was shared with me by a friend. I lost my brother the same way. It is so beautiful and comforting. So check it out and take a listen. Here's Ghost by Stephen James. We will be right back. You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 and 107.3 FM.
I didn't think you could overdose on pain. Now whenever I do the things we did, it doesn't feel the same no more. The curtains close, the show can't go on without you saying you're not forgotten, but you're gone. Feel like I'm seeing you go. Why don't you pick up the phone? I really thought that we had all the time in the world has gone backwards. Never thought it would end. Now I need you. Feel like I'm seeing your ghost. Did you tell me that everything would be alright? Didn't think I'd be carrying and burying it in the feeling and dreaming. You're cheering me on in the front row, trying to forgive it, forget it. I could have done more. Say that you're now forgotten, but you're gone. Feel like I'm seeing you go. Why don't you pick up the phone? I really thought that we had all the time in the world has gone backwards. Never thought it would end. Now I need you. Feel like I'm seeing you go. Why don't you pick up the phone? I really thought that we had all the time in the world has gone backwards. Never thought it would end. Now I need you. Feel like I'm seeing your ghost.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Play It Forward. And we are here with Suffolk County Executive Assistant
Executive Assistant DA Megan O'Donnell and Narcotics Bureau Chief Max Murray.
No,
Mark, sorry.
Mark Murray. There was a little joke. Anyway, so let's pick up where we left off. Kurt,
I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris has got his own question.
and Taylor has a question
Yes.
as well.
So yeah, when I was growing up, I'm a little bit older now, but growing up, if I was with somebody that was overdosing and I called 911, the fear was real that I was going to get arrested or get in trouble for trying to save my friend or somebody's life, if not my friend, a stranger. What's the law nowadays?
Okay. New York State codified what's called the Good Samaritan statute approximately 11 years ago. And it says that a victim or a witness of a medical episode, it's meant really to address an overdose, but it's broadly framed as a medical episode because somebody who's there witnessing something like this, we're not doctors. If you're a witness, you're a victim, and drugs or alcohol are involved, you call 911 and you are covered by the statute. It's a scary thing. Conceptually, I get it for people. One of the things we've looked to do with our messaging is make sure people understand this. It's been on the books again for over a decade, and I still don't get the sense that people fully appreciate the significance of it. The one thing I would say is it's predicated on good faith, which, again, understanding people are scared. Good faith is promptly calling 911, calling authorities, and cooperating and communicating, because the goal is to save a life. If you're calling 911 and incident to that, you're cleaning up the scene, you're flushing drugs down the toilet, you're putting stuff in the garbage, you're hiding, what was really going on, that's not good faith. If you come up with a cover story, my friend was choking on a cookie. We've had something similar to that. Yeah. Not good faith. If you don't call 911 at all and then try to somehow back into this situation if somebody else does it and try to pose as if you're doing the right thing. No, it's all predicated on good faith. You do the right thing, you walk away, you're not charged. And hopefully we get this message out and people do that. We've seen this. I can tell you the statute works. People have been rewarded in scary, tough situations for doing just that. But you got to own the situation for what it is. Because when you clean up a scene, when you don't tell the full story, you're not only hindering medical professionals' ability to perhaps most acutely diagnose and help a situation, but you're also hindering our ability from a criminal perspective from working backwards and maybe trying to go after responsible people for dealing lethal product. So it's really two things there.
And thank you for the clarification, because I did not know all of that, but it obviously makes sense not to don't cover it up and then try to call.
Right.
Yes, those seconds count.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That was a great question, Chris. Thank you.
Back to the opioid crisis as a whole, do you believe that there's a need for specific legal reforms or changes to address the opioid crisis more effectively?
I think I can speak for both Mark and I. The answer is definitely yes, especially here in New York State. The bail reform laws, which everyone can say that perhaps there was needed reforms to be made, but it was just in one fell swoop. Now we're in a position where, again, as Mark said, people sell fentanyl. They can possess 7.5 ounces of fentanyl, enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people, and yet we don't even have the ability to ask for bail. And bail is important. Think about it for two reasons. Bail is important because the person who's out on the street dealing fentanyl, selling fentanyl, is causing death. So to get that person in jail, even for one night, is keeping him or her off the street and saving people's lives that night. But it's also important from a treatment perspective. People who are suffering from substance use disorder and addiction, and they need treatment, sometimes they're not going to seek that treatment out on their own. Sometimes they have to be forced into it or mandated into it. And years ago, prosecutors had the ability to stand before a judge, and the defense attorney, the prosecutor, the judge could talk about a particular defendant who was arrested and brought in with drug charges. And we would make a decision. Perhaps this person could use drug court, treatment court. And the judge would then give the defendant a choice. You can either go to treatment court or you could go to jail. What's your decision? And that defendant would choose treatment court just because he or she didn't want to go to jail. That could have saved their life. We do not have that ability anymore. And I can tell you, it's not just prosecutors who are seeking reform in that respect. It's also defense attorneys and families. Families have said, my child went through this. I chose not to post bail because I wanted my child to be forced into treatment court. we just have lost that ability today with bail reform. It's really been difficult. And as we talked a little bit earlier about the death by dealer statute, that's another thing that's really important, again, to have a discussion about having a law in New York State where the charge is commensurate with the damage that has been done. A dealer who intentionally causes the death of another, that person should be charged with more than just a simple drug sale. In certain situations or circumstances, it is appropriate and important to be able to call it what it truly was, which was a death sale. So those are two things that I know our DA is advocating for and really wants a discussion. I'm not sure if I've overlooked a few other reforms. Maybe Mark has some.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And bail, obviously, traditionally is looked at as a punitive measure, but it is also something that has brought certain horses to water when it comes to rehabilitation, if that was an option for them. And in the county court level, because things tend to work a little bit differently in terms of the way felonies are managed, there hasn't been such a dip in the participation in our rehabilitation programs. But on the district court level, I can tell you I'm aware that the participation has plummeted. And I think, Megan, you're more acquainted with that because you're the supervisor of the Drug Court Bureau.
Yes.
District Court Bureau.
I actually just recently talked to the coordinator of the treatment courts who also manages drug court. And I think that his figures were somewhere around the ballpark of fallen by about half. So wow. in years past, it was between 77 and 80 people who would enter drug court. Now it's down to about 40, 44 people. So you're talking about a 50% decrease in people who really need that particular courtroom. Mm-hmm. And again, if it was up to us prosecutors, we would advocate for it. We just don't have the ability to mandate it. And without bail, there's just no mandating it.
People need to write to legislators.
Yes, and people need to come with us in January.
Oh, we're coming.
When we go to Albany as well.
We'll be there with you.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Take part of the discussion.
Go ahead, Will.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to ask, are there like any collaborative efforts, like as far as like with other jurisdictions and countries to address the like global aspect of the opioid trade? Because it's been said that like when drugs come into the country, you know what I mean? It's like they can stop it, but they don't seem to be stopping it. But I just wanted to know if it's like, is there any like collaboration with other jurisdictions and countries to put an end to the trafficking of these drugs coming in here?
Well, that's really a federal problem at the end, right? The federal government is responsible for negotiating with other countries and protecting our borders. Locally, I can tell you, we work very well with Department of Homeland Security, which polices certain ports of entry, like our airports, JFK, et cetera, and they are responsible for working with customs to interdict certain packages that might be mailed into the country. And in those situations, we will get involved because the packages are local, the targets are local, and we can impact certain things that way. But when it comes to how it comes in to the country, unfortunately, that's beyond, our immediate ability to do anything about it. I think everyone's acutely aware that there's a problem.
Yeah.
How you go about solving it is an entirely different conversation.
Well, the precursors from China is a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it.
I recall a few weeks ago when the DA was being interviewed about another topic, but somehow this conversation came up, this topic about the conversations between the U.S. and China, recent conversations. And the news media seemed to make a big hay out of the fact that I guess there was an agreement that there would be less of these precursors being sent.
It's going to be curbed.
And
I hated that word, how they
the
even
DA
put it.
pointed out the irony. Well, why not all? Isn't that the question? Isn't that what would have been celebrated?
Stop sending it.
Correct. As Mark pointed out, it's a federal issue where they have the tools to fix it. But unfortunately, we at the county level, at the local level, we're the ones that are dealing with the repercussions of what decisions they've made.
Can you guys speak to the distribution network from source to destination on Long Island of opioids, fentanyl, tranq? whatever we're seeing now?
Tranq or xylazine is something I think we first became aware of, to my immediate recollection, in 2021, incident to a series of fatal overdoses that we were investigating. And slowly it became more prominently recognized in the sample of fentanyl that is in our commerce stream. Everything, not surprisingly, most everything we see flows through the city, right? So the city had more statistics on xylazine earlier than we did. We're tracking it now, but the xylazine is a phenomenon of the past 3 years and ramping up. It's increasingly a common constituent of the fentanyl we're seeing, both in pressed form as well as powder form. In terms of the distribution, there's no real mystery to this. Almost all the fentanyl exclusively is distributed by the cartels out of Mexico. Most of the time it is manufactured there. Their stock and trade is getting their hands on the precursor chemical called 4-ANPP, which is a controlled substance in and of itself. They will synthesize it in their clandestine labs. 1 kilogram of 4-ANPP, which is approximately 2.2 pounds, if synthesized, can produce 20 kilos of fentanyl. So imagine, like I said, a situation where you're not tied to a grow cycle, but you've got these labs operating with impunity.
That's such an interesting piece that I never thought of before you just mentioning that with the grow cycles and everything is,
It's nonstop. There's no end in sight to it. So it travels north and it worms its way into every community that, is a magnet for this sort of thing, which is pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
What can local communities and your average citizen do to help support the efforts to combat the crisis in Suffolk County? How can they get involved?
I'm glad you asked that because I'm going to give you an answer, Garrett.
Okay.
So, as you know, the overdose epidemic that is witnessed locally is astounding, right? We had 30 homicides last year in 2022, over 400 fatal overdoses. Those fatal overdoses do not include non-fatal overdoses. We have on the books with PD statistics, which, by the way, only cover the 5 western towns, approximately 1,350 non-fatal overdoses for 2022. Those are people who can help us. They are survivors who acquired product from somewhere that put them in a bad situation. When we are working in the Bureau with our overdose team to put together these fentanyl prosecutions, we're working backward. We've got, unfortunately, a dead body, and we're trying to figure out what the story was. We're looking at their phone. We're looking for any available witnesses. We're reviewing videos that might be available to us, and it's daunting. But if you've got a live witness, somebody who used, again, maybe there is that fear factor, like you had said earlier, with what's going to happen to me if I cooperate with the authorities? Is it going to have some negative implication for me? And the answer should be no. Today's non-fatal overdose can be tomorrow's fatal overdose. And the person who's out there dealing to the non-fatal will likely be responsible for a fatal tomorrow. So those families, those witnesses, those victims in those non-fatal overdose situations, if you have the courage to talk to us, maybe we can do something about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to give, I don't know if Willie or Chris have anything they want to add.
Sure.
Because we're getting towards the end, but if you guys had any thoughts or comments or questions.
When you spoke about earlier, when you mentioned about, like the drug court thing and the mandation thing to these programs and stuff like that, I feel that a lot of times that could be a deterrent for a lot of people because they feel that, a lot of people get mandated to these programs and then they be like, oh, I ain't gonna have these people telling me what to do. I'm only here because and then they do the bare minimum in these programs. They just do the bare minimum so the counselors and everything can see, oh, this person is doing this. Okay, he's good, but he's really not, into
so they
getting
get the piece of paper. And
so they can get the piece of paper and then they could just go and continue doing what they was doing before that. And it's just like, me being in recovery, and it's like, this is something that you have to want this. This is not something that's, that's just gonna come to you. If somebody making you do this, then you're not doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
And that causes a lot of people to relapse. And me, myself, this is something that I want, because I've been through seeing people overdosing and just walking away. You know what I mean? That was me. I've seen a couple of people overdosing, and fortunately, it wasn't a fatal overdose. You know what I mean? But it's just that I just stepped away because I didn't want to get involved, like you said, with the police and everything like that. I didn't want to be in the midst of that, because I myself was in the process of, handling drugs and stuff like that, and I didn't want to be a part of that. So that's what made me like that. But now, today, I have no problem with calling the police or something like that if I see something like that, because we have done 5K walks at Hope House, and we got training on Narcan and things of that nature. Right now in my room, I have a Narcan kit. Hopefully I don't have to use it. I do have one, so just in case something does happen, I'll know how to use it, and I'll be able to save somebody.
Willie, if I could just address that, because even in the days of pre-bail reform, when I say mandate, the person still always had a choice. Remember, the defendant had the choice. The defendant could either go to drug court, or bail could be set and that person would go to jail and would go through the normal avenue of prosecution. So maybe, two choices, neither one of them look very good to the person, but that defendant still had a choice. And the family, the defense attorney, the judge, the prosecutor, we could not force the person. So when I use the word mandate, what I meant is giving the person those two choices. Today, unfortunately, since bail reform, there's not even that choice. The choice really, it comes down to, you could either go to drug court voluntarily, or I release you because I can't hold you on bail and you go home. And unfortunately, what do you think? Many of the people who are suffering from disorder, substance abuse disorder, they go home and they go right back to using. So I stick by my opinion that we need reform to bring those mandates back. And again, maybe mandate's not the best word, because ultimately it does come down to the defendant's choice.
Wow.
And I don't want to speak for Willie, but from what I've experienced, we in previous years at Hope House, and sometimes currently, we have an alternative sentencing. So you come to Hope House for a long-term program. And with my experience, and maybe with some of Willie's, is some of those guys, it can go either way. They're extremely grateful for the opportunity. They're going to turn their lives around. Or this is a lesser punishment than if I were to go to jail, and I can do this and do the bare minimum, and it'll be less painful than if I were to go to jail. And then you're always going to get those people, though, I think, unfortunately.
And also, too, it's like, I feel like, if you mention jail, it all depends on how much time is the person looking at. If the person is looking at a long, extended period of time, of course he's going to take the mandate because it's less time, and he don't have to go to jail and spend a lot of time in jail. I've been to jail myself, and I don't wish jail on nobody. I mean, if it's to the point where, that's the choice, then so be it. It is what it is. But me, myself, I was never offered a option like that, jail or drug court. I was never afforded that opportunity. But I'm just, thankful for where I'm at today. And I'm just making the best of what I got to do for me, you know what I mean? And that's the road that I'm on. So.
Good for you, Will.
Thanks, Will. Chris, you want to add anything?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to say while I'm on the air, that anybody listening, that there's tons of resources out there. There's tons of people that want to help. Phone numbers, whether it's drugs, any sort of trauma, suicide. Like, there's so much help out there.
Yeah.
It's taboo to talk about, but it's starting not to be. And we got to help spread that message to the world.
We are talking about it.
And I think that's, if I want to say anything, that's what I want to say.
All right, Chris.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have time for one more quick little question? We're wrapping it up. Taylor, go for it really quick. I think even if it's a few words of advice.
Sure. What advice can you offer to our student listeners?
It's a tough one.
Be informed, read, educate yourself, whether it's watching a video, reading an article, coming to a presentation.
Yeah.
Learn about the subject matter.
Go watch Dope Sick or any of those shows. You want to see what's actually happening, and
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Mark and Megan, thank you so much. This goes
Thank
really
you.
quick.
Yeah,
Chris and Will.
Thanks
Great
for
job.
co-hosting. Yeah,
having
good
me.
show,
Thank
guys.
you for your service, your outstanding service, and your outreach efforts. I really am glad that the listeners know that you do a lot more than just lock people up.
Yes.
You're out there.
They've come out here twice this week, just for our listeners to know. Like,
Yeah.
they
You guys are
really,
awesome.
you guys care. You're really like walk the walk and talk the talk. And we're grateful to have your support and collaboration and look forward to the future.
Well, thank
Very
you.
grateful. And
Thank you
we're
for having
looking-
us.
Absolutely. And we look forward to going to Albany with
Yes.
you. We're going to
Yes.
raise hell.
Wonderful.
Write us a message if you want to join, or if you're interested in finding out more. Please hit us up on Instagram at SBU Play It Forward, all one word.
Yes. And write to your legislators.
Yes.
People. So let's continue to spread awareness about the dangers of illicit fentanyl and promote harm reduction tools like Narcan and fentanyl test strips with strong backing from multiple community-based organizations such as LICAD, Seafield, FIST, Hope House Ministries, and Professional Treatment. I sincerely thank everyone who supports our cause and understands how important it is to look out for each other and empathize with anyone you know dealing with addiction.
Struggling with mental health or substance use? You're not alone. Reach out to SAMHSA at 1-800-662-HELP or text HELP for you for support. SAMHSA also has a 24/7 info service at 1-800-487-4889. For additional help, please visit Hope House Ministries online at hhm.org or call 631-928-2377. LICAD, Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, offers support and guidance at 631-979-1700, and you can find more information at licad.org.
Fentanyl test strips are available at many harm reduction organizations and online, such as dancesafe.org and Amazon. LICAD of Long Island distributes fentanyl test strips as part of their free Narcan kits. Please have Narcan accessible. You can save the life of someone overdosing even when it's least expected. On behalf of Play It Forward, thank you all for listening. We invite you today to join us on Instagram to see behind the teens content, ask us questions, share your thoughts and ideas, and be part of our dynamic, growing community. We hope
Please
to
join.
hear from you. Yes. So for now and always,
Keep playing it forward.
Yeah, we're getting better at that. You hear it again from the hip hop to rock, blues, reggae, electronic to punk, commentary, and more on WUSB 90.1, 107.3 FM. Donate to WUSB, everyone. This is a great radio station. You can call 631-632-6901 or 188-632-9872 to pledge your donation. Thank you so much for your support. This is Allison of the Play It Forward Project, and I hope you tune in to our next show on December 22nd with DEA Special Agent in Charge, Frank Tarantino.
Frank.
Yes. Again, and we didn't talk about the fentanyl summit, so we need to do that next
It looks
time.
like you guys are coming back again.
Yeah. So thank you again, WUSB, Tyrone, Chris, Will, Mark, and Megan, and of course my co-hosts, Taylor and Kurt. So we have a closing song that was picked out by Mark. It's a familiar one, and we want everyone to Don't Stop Believing.
Oh, yeah, nice.
By Journey. You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 and 107.3 FM. Be well, everyone, and please look out for one another.
Living in a lonely world, she took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere. A singer in a smoky